Aloha kako, and welcome to this special edition of Kanaka Express. I'm your host, Kale Gumapak, and I'd like to thank you for allowing us into your home tonight. I'd like to welcome my guests tonight, Dr. Keanu Sai and Dexter Kayama, who's going to be joining me tonight. And it's a special edition because a part of the show is going to be talking about me and a situation that I've encountered. And it's a situation that came about August 12th, and I was served with a writ of possession, and it surprised the heck out of me when that happened. And I'm going to show you a video in a couple minutes, but I'd like to explain and set it up because I was very surprised when I was served the writ of possession by Sheriff Patrick Kawai on the island of Hawaii, because I wasn't expecting it because of all of the evidence that had been provided to the courts as well as to the banks, and thinking that with all this evidence that they had received, that, you know, things would move along and the writ of possession would not move forward, but yet it did. And we're going to be talking about that because what we had done was follow the law. And we're going to be explaining that along with my guests, Dr. Keanu Sai, as well as Dexter Kayama, and we're going to be talking about that. But what I'd like to do now is kind of show you the video that we shot when Sheriff Patrick Kawai came to my home and to the offices of Laulima to serve the writ of possession, and the encounter that I had with Sheriff Kawai. And it was very interesting to see his reaction and the dialogue that went on between the two of us. So the next few minutes, watch the video, and then I'm going to be discussing it with my experts about that that encounter that I had with Sheriff Patrick Kawai.
Morning.
So I'm over here just to let you guys know, or let you know, that we're going to execute the order. So as a courtesy, we always do this whenever we come out. Take a look at the property, and hopefully the people move out on their own. I know what your situation is. I don't want to get into the political aspect of it, whether your political beliefs for the state of Hawaii being occupied and all of that stuff. I'm just letting you know that we got an eviction order and we got to carry out this eviction order. So I can give you a copy of this. If you want us to certify copies.
Okay.
Good.
Well,
give you my card also.
the political, well, you know this is wrong, right?
Well, regardless of my personal beliefs, we carry on valid order from the courts. So that's why I don't want to get into this. This is wrong and all that stuff.
The order is illegal.
And
the order is illegal, and you know that.
In your interpretation.
And I know that you know that.
In your interpretation, yes.
Because you have met, you know, with Dexter, and I don't know if you met with Keanu.
I know Keanu, yeah.
You know, and you've read a whole bunch of our briefs. And I also know that you understand all of the legal issues that we have brought forth. And it's not, you know, the stuff that we have. It's not political. This is all legal information. And what the judges have done is that they have broken the laws. You know, we provided
all of the legal evidence that has not been refuted. They haven't been able to refute any of the information. And so what you're doing is you're enforcing laws that the judges wrote. That's what you're doing. And you know it's wrong.
In your opinion, okay, what I'm doing is letting you, informing you that we have a valid court order.
No, the court order is not valid.
And that's your position.
No.
I'm just letting you know.
The court order is not valid.
And that's your position. You can take that perception, why not? What I'm over here to do is just came over here as a courtesy to let you know that we're gonna execute this eviction order. Okay, normally what we try to do from there is we encourage the defendants to move out on their own. I don't know what your position will be or whatnot, but our position is clear. We gotta execute this order.
Yeah. But this court order is not valid, and it hasn't been. And I know you've read all this stuff.
And like I said,
I talked to other guys
that's your position.
That you have been able to read all this stuff, and you talked to not only Dexter but several other guys, and they say that you're a very intelligent man, and you know this stuff, but you're doing it because that's your job.
Well, you know, that's why I said, regardless of my personal beliefs, my profession compels me to execute this order.
But the other thing that happens is that by doing this, you're also going to be committing, and you also are aware that you're committing a crime, a war crime, by doing this. And you know, this information has also been sent out to the International Criminal Courts, and they're very much aware of all of this stuff with the International Criminal Courts. And you know, and this isn't a sovereignty thing. This is all legal stuff that is just so amazing to me that the courts, with all the information that we provided, you know, they're ignoring all this information, have not been able to refute it. And at the same time, they're continuing to roll it, not just Hawaiians, but continue to ignore all of this legal information that is so solid that they cannot break it. And instead the judges are saying, tough, I'm still going to make the ruling on it, even though they have no standing. And they're breaking their own U.S. Supreme Court rulings. You know, that's what's so crazy about it. And we go into courts and we listen to the judges, and the judges are violating their own laws. And this isn't right. I mean, we have played by the rules. We have followed the rules. We followed the U.S. laws to the T. And how can we follow U.S. laws when the judges are breaking their own laws? And the judges are doing it because they say, oh, we have the power, but yet they're not following their own laws. That's not correct. When you read and you understand what the laws are, and you follow the laws too, but when you have judges that's breaking their own laws, that's not right.
Once again, it's your opinion, your perception.
No, that's not.
I'm not over here for dispute the court system or not. For us, it's very clear. We get explicit orders to execute an eviction order. I left you my card. Hopefully you want to come communicate with me if you want to talk, and hopefully we can go through this thing as least abrasive as possible. It is our intent every time we do these types of orders is we try to be as least intrusive as possible. In other words, try to keep the people's dignity intact and have them move out on their own. Whether as opposed to having a whole bunch of deputies in uniforms and whatnot and come over here and compel people to leave. That never is our intent, is to create conflict.
Well,
that's why we come out and try
and this is why I try to do everything according to the laws, according to the rules. You know, that's what we've been doing. That's what our intent has always been with Laulima and with Dr. Keanu Sai.
This right here is straight directly from the Hawaii Revised Statutes.
See, but Hawaii Revised Statutes cannot be doing that.
I'm going to go on as far as say, because understand the mindset behind the whole occupation. Therefore, the laws are, you cannot enforce United States law in the kingdom, the subjects of the kingdom of Hawaii. And I understand all of those things. What I'm letting you know is that we're very clear on what we got to do. And that's why I try not to get involved with all of this perception and whatnot, because like I said, I get my personal opinions also. Unfortunately, my personal opinion has no weight when it comes down to my professional authority to execute these orders.
Yeah, but
Even though it makes you an accessory after the fact.
I'm sorry?
This makes you an accessory after the fact.
It will make whatever you guys, whatever your
Under
guys'
international
perception
law.
or whatever your contentions are, it'll make it. I'm not over here to argue with you. I'm certainly not over here to fight with you guys.
You should learn.
I'm just letting you folks know that this is what we got.
right. You know,
So-
and at the same time, we don't want to fight with nobody. We don't. We don't.
Right.
You know, that's not our
And I
intent.
appreciate that,
And the
yeah.
thing is that, you know, this is our country, and this is the Hawaiian country. This is the Hawaiian Kingdom. This is the Hawaiian country, and all my life, I was led to believe that a lie. And when you finally wake up after 60-something years, and you finally wake up and you understand what the truth is, I mean, that's mind-boggling. And then when you finally know all this stuff, and you start to present this into the courts, what? Irrefutable evidence. And you hope that the judges, not hope, that what the judge is supposed to follow. And you see the judges breaking these rules and breaking the laws. That's not right. That is not right. And it's nothing, we never break the law.
And just like I said,
You know, we haven't broken any laws. We're
Like I-
following the laws.
like I said, I understand where you
And we're not,
platform you're coming
and
from.
we're not going to break the laws because we're going to follow the laws
And-
to the T.
And this, like I said, is your position. We're not over here. We want to come over here, discuss this matter with you, and we're out of here. Do you have a phone number we can contact you by?
Yeah,
Right there.
896-7420.
And then you have my card over there. I mean, if you want to discuss the matter further, you can contact me.
Because right over here, this is where this is our office, La Lima office right over here. We work out here. And so this is our office. It's not only one house, but this is La Lima's office. You know, and so this is what we do. We help people.
Okay. Like I said, I mean, I'm not going to delve into the issue of the Hawaiian Kingdom and all that stuff.
Should come in and do a presentation.
And discuss this matter with you. I'm sorry, man.
Should have him come in and we'll do a presentation.
Presentation on
Yeah, to see what
The history,
the history
the
was.
truth.
the sheriff's office did a whole hell of a lot of research in the matter and whatnot. And the sheriff's position now is very clear on these types of matters. This is, and he's the one that's leading the division, so you know we're compelled to execute these orders. So I mean, the sheriff's office already we did what we gotta do doing diligence, and we're at this juncture in time where now it becomes executable, so we're gonna have to execute the order. Okay.
Oh, that's not right.
And like I
No,
said, that's your
that-
position. You can take that position.
That's not right.
Yeah.
You know, in executing this order, whether it's me, whether it's Quanah Bright, whether it's, you know, you did that with the Schwartz over in Quanah, and whether it's anybody else, you know, it's not right. Because all of the evidence was presented to the judges.
But
And-
nevertheless, the orders took him down, and
No,
the
and the
orders
judge
are
and the
valid.
judges broke the law.
And that's your opinion. That's what I'm saying.
No, they broke the law because it was irrefutable, and if the bank's attorneys couldn't refute the evidence. And we followed the rules. And it's really, really frustrating when
I
we follow
understand.
the
In any
rules.
eviction with anybody, regardless if they're tied in with Law Limas or the police in Hawaiian Kingdom or just the average person out there that's just bad times and they lost their property, it's very, very frustrating for everybody. I understand that. You know.
Well,
Like I said, for
there's-
us guys,
there's a difference.
all we got is when we go in order, the eviction order. The stuff that happens over here in Cordon, we don't even deal with that. You know, we're the unbiased party out of it. We're not with the judiciary, come on the executive branch, and that's the reason why we follow the order itself, and we just come on and do them, regardless of whatever happens.
no, but
in-
this
in-
is
in
where
the
you
past.
guys are going to be pulled into this and are following through with an illegal order that the judges have signed off on. that they're already getting hit at the International Criminal Court.
Well, and that's
And-
your contention.
and
I mean,
this
as far as the ICC is involved, I mean, there is no, at this point in time, no action has been taken upon with the ICC.
It's already up there.
Well,
and
anything can be up there. There can be all kinds of documents and files and whatnot. But until there's some type of action involved, I think at this point in time, and I'm only saying the personal thinking is that's the position of the sheriff's office simply because there is no action. No, that's my personal thing. I'm just stating that. But like I said, we get a marching orders from the sheriff. Okay. As far as what happens in court and whatnot, to us, there's of no consequence because we get a valid document that is filed in the court system, regardless of your belief or your opinion about the legality of the court system itself. That's where we're at. And I know it's unfortunate. I know it's very frustrating for you. It's very frustrating for us too. Because we talk about Hawaiians and all of that. A lot of my deputies Hawaiian. I'm half Hawaiian. Yeah, but
yeah,
regardless,
out of Hawaii, and to see you
regardless of
and
the situation,
other Hawaiian sheriffs doing this kind of stuff, you know.
You think you're American?
It's crazy.
I tell you what,
It's
I mean,
crazy to see.
without
Hawaiians
getting into too much about the race issue and whatnot, we'll just leave that side of it. We wear a common badge, and that's what we gotta do. We're common orders, and that's where we're at.
See, and that's where we don't want to see Hawaiian sheriffs get themselves in trouble. We don't, and that's why we've been working really hard to try to prevent that from happening.
Well, I'll tell you what, if there's
don't
Hawaiian
wanna see
sheriffs
that.
that choose not to do this, they can get into trouble. From our side of it, from the sheriff, the
I
department side,
understand
the government
that
side of it.
because
Because they're in that
of
conflict.
the
Yeah.
threat of losing your jobs.
Well,
But the problem is that Hawaiian sheriffs, if they get involved in this, will be facing prison, you know, in getting hit with the war crimes because we know that this is coming down. We know it. And, you know, I got my cousins that are sheriffs. And we're talking to them and say, wow, you gotta try to avoid this as much as possible. I got cousins that's in the sheriff's department. You know, and this is we're not playing funny kind of games here. This is reality stuff. And we're getting letters from the prosecutor's office, from the ICC, and they're communicating with you know, Keanu and Dexter. They're sending stuff back, and we're seeing this stuff. You know, and the Attorney General's office, I don't know why they're not communicating with you guys.
well,
And it's crazy that they're not talking to you guys and telling you guys to stand
in
on.
our due diligence, we made multiple contacts with the Attorney General's office.
And
with
it's
the position.
Nagamine, it's crazy. You know, that's over there and forcing you guys to do this. And Nagamine, you know, it's putting you guys in harm's way, man. It's putting you guys in harm's way. And I'm seeing all the Hawaiian sheriffs, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy that the Hawaiian brothers are being put in this position.
Throwing them under the bus.
I think not even to referencing Hawaiian. I think just law enforcement in general is really very
Yeah,
peculiar,
all law enforcement, and it's not just Hawaii,
situation.
it's all the law enforcement
And
guys,
that's
because
what I'm looking at. Yes.
you guys are having to deal with an order coming from the judge, and the judges are trying to protect the state of Hawaii, and then having you guys deal with an order that they know, and even in the courts when the judges are dealing with Dexter, they have no answer. You know, and so they're making the ruling and then putting you guys in harm's way, and which isn't right.
Thank you for meeting with us. I know it's frustrating. I want to take up any more of your time. This is what I have. If you have any more comments or questions, you can contact me. My card is there. I hope you don't mind if I have any further questions or contact you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, there you see the video and the encounter that I had with Sheriff Patrick Kawai. And, you know, there were questions that were raised in terms of, you know, what happened with the judges, what was the rules, and what did the courts do that they should have done, what was broken and so forth. And, you know, I'd like to ask our attorney, Dexter Kayama, you know, if we can address that.
Sure. And before I do, why don't I just give a little bit of a disclosure. Actually, Kali Gumapak did hire me as his attorney in his case where Deutsche Bank was bringing a foreclosure action against himself and his former wife. So it is in that capacity that I'm speaking today as Kali Gumapak's attorney. We may be also discussing a couple of other cases. You mentioned Kona Bright, Harris Bright, and I think we also will be talking today about the Schwartzes.
Yes.
Those clients have also instructed and authorized me to speak about their cases, and that's why I'm here today. Now, talking about that video that encounter you had with Sheriff Kawai, it all stemmed from motions that I filed on your behalf, asking the courts to dismiss the complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. Essentially what we did when you spoke about the evidence, I provided the expert testimony of Dr. Kianusai, along with a whole slew of exhibits, including the executive agreements between Queen Liliuokalani and President Grover Cleveland, where Queen Liliuokalani temporarily assigned her authority. And then the Queen and President concluded their negotiations, and it resulted in an agreement whereby the President was obligated to restore the Hawaiian Kingdom. And the Queen, in return, as a condition, once restored, would then consider, well, would actually pardon those who committed treason against her. The evidence we provided, again, you talked about it, mentioned it in your video, was undisputed. There was no opposition presented by the attorneys for the Deutsche Bank. Nor did the judge have any opposition. In fact, he took judicial notice of all the documents that we submitted. Given those circumstances, it was my assertion and my argument before the court that we proved not only the continuity of the Hawaiian Kingdom, but we also proved that the court had no subject matter jurisdiction. And by law, he was obligated to dismiss the complaint. Of course, what happened is the judge denied the motion and continued with the foreclosure process. Essentially, the judge became non-compliant with both U.S. constitutional law and, more importantly, international law, and that is the law of occupation. By continuing to retain jurisdiction, what the court in fact did, and what Judge Nakamura did in this case, was committed violations of the Hague and Geneva Conventions and deprived you of a fair and regular trial. Under the Hague and Geneva Conventions, the deprivation of a fair and regular trial is in fact listed as a war crime. In addition, the United States in 1996 enacted a similar statute as a high contracting party to the Geneva Convention, making the deprivation of a fair and regular trial also a felony under U.S. law. Eventually, the court did issue a writ of possession, and they actually, I think they sold your house on foreclosure. What I've been doing on your behalf is continuing to apprise Sheriff Kawai that to enforce an unlawful order would then implicate him in the commission of the war crimes. To his credit, I think Lieutenant Kawai has received the information I've sent him. I've sent him information since your complaint, including the filing of the complaints with the International Criminal Courts, as well as providing him additional information whereby he could review the information and make inquiries up his chain of command, and at the same time stand down until those inquiries are addressed. So essentially, I think that's the position I've been taking on your behalf, is to prevent the sheriff from implicating himself by enforcing an unlawful eviction order.
Yeah. with some of the with what you saw in the video, Keanu, what are some of the points that you think are important for people, you know, watching this show that you think that they should know about?
I think right off the bat there needs to be a clear understanding and the distinction between what is political, politics, and what are the rules or what are laws. Okay, some people tend to confuse the two. Yeah, they think that a law is political and what is political could be a law. Okay, a law is just by definition a rule. It's just a rule that people got to follow. If you break the rule, it gets enforced. Politics are relationships that revolve around the rules. Okay, and politics can change as the wind changes. Okay, but the rules stay the same. What's important to know is that when you have a particular rule or law, an action may be considered political if it's not violating that law. Okay? But if the action or the social relations taking place are unlawful in relation to that law, then what you have is criminal conduct. Okay? So politics is not criminal, and criminal is not political. Okay? Criminal is criminal, politics is politics. When we're talking about laws, we're talking about laws that have effect and laws that can be taken into effect. What I noticed on the film, Lieutenant Kavai was saying, well, that's political, it's not legal, okay? And you kept responding, no, this is legal, okay? So based upon what Dexter was presenting here, you're dealing with rules, you're dealing with rules of evidence, and these rules were not followed, which is called the rule of law, okay? And the whole purpose of a defendant in receiving a fair trial is if there is evidence that there is a problem with the court's authority, that defendant has the right to raise it. In fact, an advocate, an attorney for a defendant has the duty to raise it even if the defendant may not know it, but the advocate does, okay? They have to raise it. So what Dexter was explaining here earlier was the information was presented. Now, a lot of people may not really understand how the court system works. Yeah? A court system, a judge is based upon impartiality. Okay? It's supposed to be independent. And that the adversarial parties are the plaintiff and the defendants. Okay? So the judge is like a referee. Okay? He's not supposed to pick a side. And there are certain rules that maintain that impartiality. Yeah? And the judge ensures the rules are followed, you know, in these rules of these procedures called the Hawaii Rules of Civil Procedure, and also the Hawaii Rules of Evidence. Yeah? So when Dexter spoke earlier of a judicial notice being provided by the judge, that is a very profound position to get a judge to take, in that the judge takes judicial notice of evidence. Because according to the Hawaii Rules of Evidence, you have evidence that may not necessarily be true. It's depending upon the additional evidence that you may present to a jury or to a judge, okay, for ultimate determination. But once a judge determines certain evidence to take judicial notice of, what that action has done is say that this evidence is irrefutable. It is not subject to interpretation. It is what it is. So for the judge to take judicial notice of the evidence that Hawaii is a part of the United States, that was supposed to have raised the level, the bar a bit higher for the plaintiff to try to refute.
Just a quick interruption. You meant to say that Hawaii is not a part of the United States, right?
Oh, did I say it was?
Yeah.
oh, my bad. So, yeah, so the evidence clearly shows that Hawaii is not a part of the United States, the executive agreements, the treaties, and so forth. And to take judicial notice of that, he's basically taking judicial notice of the evidence that says Hawaii is not a part of the United States. And the plaintiff, Deutsche Bank attorney, provided no evidence at all to counter that position after judicial notice was taken. And then for the judge then to now rule in favor of Deutsche Bank clearly is a signal of an unfair trial. So what you see there is an interplay between politics and law, criminality and law. And what that constituted there, that action there, was not political, what the judge did, it was criminal. Because that now falls under the war crimes. Article 147 of the Geneva Convention, which is a treaty that says to deprive a person, willfully deprive a person of a fair and regular trial is a war crime. And under the 1996 War Crimes Act that Dexter brought up, passed by the U.S. Congress, which criminalized war crimes from the Geneva Conventions, that's a felony. So you can see how sticky this gets. Yeah. But again, it's people are they seem to not see or distinguish between politics and law, and then within politics, criminality and politics.
And I think just to expound upon that, I know some people may ask, well, why are we even going into the courts and asking the judges if the judges and all of this doesn't exist, if Hawaii doesn't exist as a state of the union? And the reason we're doing this is simple, it's compliance. What we're doing is under their own rules, Hawaii Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 12B1, we are giving the court an opportunity to comply with international law. We are giving the courts the evidence and saying, here is all the evidence, it is undisputed, you've taken judicial notice of it, and by taking judicial notice, you have an obligation to either refute it before you take judicial notice, and if you don't, you're accepting that as basically as fact. Now, we're giving you an opportunity, having been provided all of this evidence, to do the only thing that's proper, and that is to dismiss the complaint because you don't have jurisdiction. Once you've been provided that evidence, and yet you fail to comply, that's where the deprivation of the fair trial to you occurs, and that becomes a reportable offense. And that's what I've been doing on your behalf. After discussing with you, it's your instruction that, yes, I want to continue to pursue this and report the courts as well as the banks for the commission of these offenses.
Yeah, and that's also because the banks, in the process that they have, you know, because the clients have not made, quote, payment on their loan, they have proceeded to foreclose on people's homes through the court system and so forth, in lieu of the title insurance claims that, you know, we have been trying to get the banks to file claims against on the title insurance that we haven't even touched on tonight.
You know, so even if we back up, let's back up from these court proceedings and the subject matter jurisdiction. Let's get into what vested interest or any interest does Deutsche Bank have in your property? You know? Because they are claiming they have a vested interest in your property through this foreclosure process, okay? But you obviously did not give Deutsche Bank title to the property through a deed, right? That didn't take place.
That's right. That's right.
What took place is a foreclosure process, beginning by a non-judicial foreclosure process and then ejectment proceedings that was in the court, okay? Here's another point that people need to understand, that at this point I find very few people that really understand it.
Yeah, yeah.
The difference between a mortgage and a loan, okay? So there is no dispute here, and Dexter knows this in the case. There is no dispute that you borrowed money from Deutsche Bank. That's a given, that's a fact, that's irrefutable, okay? And that when you borrowed money from Deutsche Bank, what you didn't know was that you had purchased title insurance to protect Deutsche Bank in case there's a defect in the title. Now, when Deutsche Bank loaned the money to you, okay, before they loan the money to you, they require you to go to escrow. And when you go to escrow, it is the job of the escrow company to do a title search of your property, because what you will ultimately do in order to secure the repayment of the loan, you're going to provide a mortgage to Deutsche Bank. Yeah? Now, that mortgage is not a deed. That mortgage is allowing Deutsche Bank to have a lien on the property, an encumbrance, to have a hold on the property. And I think it's a good process. If you're going to be loaning a lot of money, you want something to hold on to ensure the repayment of the loan. And that's what a mortgage is.
Yeah.
So the mortgage is merely a collateral. It's security to ensure the repayment of the loan. But the bank's connection to the title is by virtue of the lien on the title. Okay. Now, in order for the bank to ensure that their lien is valid, meaning your title is valid, you have to go to escrow to have the escrow company do a title search to determine the validity of your title. And they do a title search. Now, the bank doesn't accept the mortgage after they do a title search and says, yes, Mr. Gumapak owns the property. The bank wants an insurance. So the bank requires you to purchase title insurance. And title insurance is a lender's policy that covers the amount of the money owed on the loan, okay? Title insurance needs to be purchased by the borrower as a condition of the loan, and they purchase the policy in the amount of the money they borrowed. And as they pay off the loan, the insurance coverage is reducing. It's only covering the debt owed to the bank. Okay. Now, what title insurance is, it ensures the accuracy of the title search. Clearly, the title companies did not include in their report 1893. Clearly, they did not include 1898 and the joint resolution being perceived as if it was a treaty, but it's a joint resolution. They didn't. But they should have. But they went ahead and issued the policy, and that's why the bank accepted the mortgage. Now, here's today, unbeknownst to you and other clients of Laulima, that there's a defect in the title because of 1893, which really is simple. Nobody's following Hawaiian Kingdom law, but yet all these land titles are from the Hawaiian Kingdom. They all originated 1845, rural patents, land commission awards, rural patent grants. So obviously there's a defect. If there's a defect since 1893, then that renders your property defective. If it's defective, it removes the lien, because you cannot have a valid lien on a defective title. And what protects the bank is the title insurance that you were required to purchase to protect them in case of that situation. And in this case, as other clients of Laulima, they filed claims with the insurance with the banks to file their claims with the insurance company with the evidence of the defect. Again, going to evidence. What I find interesting is that these banks refuse to file claims with the insurance company.
That's right.
Now, if they refuse to file claims with the insurance company with the evidence provided to them by the person or persons who purchased the policy, they're running a risk right there, because if there is a defect and there is no mortgage, you can't have a foreclosure process without a valid mortgage. And you can't have a valid ejectment without a valid foreclosure, which comes from a valid mortgage. So what you have there is Deutsche Bank, using the rule of law, is utilizing a court that is illegal to pillage somebody else's property. And that has nothing to do with foreclosure.
And maybe if I can explain that a little bit, because I was thinking about it. I've actually been working on your case for over 3 years. Because initially, the complaint for ejectment was brought in the district court.
In district court, exactly.
And at that time, I know when the complaint was brought by Deutsche Bank and you retained me, I know you provided Deutsche Bank with a demand that they file their claim for title insurance back then. And I know you provided all the evidence of the title defect, and as well as their right to remedy by obtaining their recovery through the title insurance. Now, what's also interesting is that in the district court, the complaint against you was dismissed.
Was dismissed.
And of
Correct.
course, we were using their own rules, and there was a question of title. Because of the defect, the judge in that case in district court found that there was a question of title, and since there was a question of title, the district court judge, didn't have jurisdiction. Now, I think it was like 6 months later that Deutsche Bank then tried to bring the action in the Third Circuit Court. All the while being apprised of the fact that there was a defect in title, that there was title insurance that you purchased on for their benefit, and that their proper remedy was to file a title insurance claim.
Correct.
Now, instead of following what was their rightful remedy, they chose instead to pursue an unlawfully constituted court in order to obtain the eviction process against you.
That's right.
So they further implicated themselves by being fully apprised of what their rightful remedy was, and instead choosing to pursue an unlawful court to obtain an unlawful writ of possession to unlawfully try to evict you.
You know, what's also interesting too, though, here's another aspect that I just remembered. Cully actually retained another attorney in California who actually filed a civil case in federal court in California against Deutsche Bank to get them to file the title insurance claim.
That's right. For a breach of contract.
For a breach of contract.
For a breach of contract.
What came out ultimately was Deutsche Bank says we are not required to file the insurance claim because Cully is not a third-party beneficiary, even though he bought the policy to protect them. So further incriminating Deutsche Bank is they have gone even taken further steps to show we are not filing the insurance claim, period. Now, we have a problem there if they're not going to file the insurance claim, because when they are supposed to file the insurance claim, they need to let the insurance company refute the evidence. And if the evidence can be refuted that Cully has a valid title, then Deutsche Bank can continue the process to foreclose. The filing of the insurance is to ensure that the process is being followed, the procedures are being followed. They're completely bypassing that whole process and just railroading the situation, which is pillaging. So it's interesting in your case though, Cully, I completely forgot this.
Yeah.
District court, circuit court, even the U.S. federal court in California, all against Deutsche Bank. If anything, what that shows is criminal intent on Deutsche Bank's on their shoulders.
Right.
But what I'm also finding out is, I don't think it's Deutsche Bank that's making all these decisions. I think it's their attorneys who are advising Deutsche Bank not to file the claim. Now that is not right, especially when you were required to buy the policy by Deutsche Bank in case this situation happens. You know?
Yeah. And then when it goes to circuit court, okay, from district to circuit court, Judge Nakamura in circuit court doesn't even look at the evidence as to what happened in district court. I mean, it's like it's totally erased and clean slate. Now, it's as though nothing ever happened in the district court level.
Right, and I think the point that we're trying to make is that Deutsche Bank had more than ample opportunity to be apprised of what the lawful situation is, and to be
Right.
apprised that their lawful remedy was in fact to seek a claim, to file a claim with the title insurance, in fact an obligation to file a claim with the title insurance. Instead, intentionally making a determination not to make those claims, but to pursue a process against you that's unlawfully constituted. And I guess, go ahead.
Well, and this is why, when Sheriff Kawai came and served me the writ, I said, we followed all the rules.
That's an understatement. Yeah, we followed the rules. District court, circuit court, federal court in California.
And the judges were breaking the rules every step of the way, along with the bank.
And just for some of the viewers who may not know, when Keanu talks about pillaging, pillaging is also described in the Geneva Convention as a war crime.
Right.
So by enforcing an unlawful writ of possession, Deutsche Bank has actually completed its pillaging of the property against you.
Right.
So since that hasn't happened yet, and the only thing that's preventing Deutsche Bank from actually Deutsche Bank has done everything that is necessary to complete the pillaging against you. The only thing that prevents it from completing it is the fact that Sheriff Kawai, up to this point, has not enforced the unlawful writ. And again, I guess that we should talk about the recent complaint that we filed with the German Republic on behalf of Cully.
That
Mr.
would be,
Gumopan.
this is a good time to talk about it.
Right. I guess it's a good segue into that. What I've done on behalf of yourself, Cully, as well as Harris Bright, another client, and again, Mr. Bright did authorize me to speak about the case, is that recently, I believe less than a week ago, August 28th, I filed a complaint with the German Federal Republic, and that's the prosecutor for the German Federal Republic, alleging war crimes against Deutsche Bank for violations of international law, the deprivation of a fair and regular trial, as well as pillaging. Now, included in the complaint were also many of those who were accessories to the deprivation of a fair and regular trial, and the pillaging, including the judges, the courts, the attorneys for Deutsche Bank, and whoever else participated in the foreclosure and eviction process. Lieutenant Kawai is also listed as a possible perpetrator once he enforces the unlawful order. So for now, he's only a possible perpetrator.
Yeah.
And the reason for filing it is that the German government and Germany also, as a high contracting party to the Hague and Geneva Conventions, enacted a statute in the German Federal Republic making the deprivations of a fair and regular trial and pillaging criminal offense under German law. And as Deutsche Bank is a German company, and its board of directors and its officers are essentially German nationals.
In Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt, it is, I've asserted on your behalf that it is the obligation of the prosecutor for the German Federal Republic to investigate these allegations and prosecute as necessary. So,
You know,
and again, we did that on August 28th. And what I did is I am assisting by, I've been trying to assist Lieutenant Kawai by providing him updated information. That federal complaint, a copy of that federal complaint was also forwarded to Lieutenant Kawai with instructions for him to stand down and to do what I believe is appropriate for him to follow his protocols and to send all of those inquiries up his chain of command and not to act until he receives a response from his chain of command. I can only speculate that I think perhaps it may have had some positive effect. But again, we're providing all the information for him to be in compliance with law.
You know what? When you're speaking about the Federal Republic of Germany, the German government, okay, when you speak about the prosecution of individuals for crimes, that responsibility primarily belongs to governments of countries. Yeah, the International Criminal Court is not a government court of a particular country, but it's an independent court at the international level. What is different from an international criminal court, which was cited in the video, and let's say the German government, the International Criminal Court cannot override or trump a government's responsibility for its prosecutorial responsibility. It has to complement it. Okay, the term that is used by the International Criminal Court is complementarity. So if the government fails to carry out that responsibility, that would give reason for the International Criminal Court to get involved. What that does is it provides time, yeah, a time of due diligence, a time of the court looking into the matter. So when you're saying that it's under the review of the court, they're looking into the matter. They cannot initiate a process until these matters are dealt with, yeah, to ensure that they don't override a government's responsibility. Now, primary responsibility of governments themselves, of countries, are to prosecute individuals for crimes. That's their job. It falls under the criminal code in most countries. Well, Germany enacted that law that Dexter referred to back in 2002, and that was called the Crimes Against International Law, the German Code of Crimes Against International Law, thereby taking the Geneva Convention war crimes and criminalizing them. So pillaging is a crime under German law. Unfair trial is a crime under German law. Now, this German law says that it will prosecute or investigate and prosecute war crimes, meaning it will. See, that's different than it may. They will investigate and prosecute if a German national committed a war crime within German territory or abroad.
Wow.
Okay? Or
wow.
they will investigate or prosecute a foreigner who committed a crime against a German within Germany or abroad. So in this particular case, Deutsche Bank is the main culprit. They are the perpetrator for pillaging, utilizing the system. And you, Cully and Harris Bright, are the victims. You're not German, but they're German. So the German law requires them to investigate. And Dexter provided the evidence. I reviewed the paperwork. It's all there. You know, they provided it. Now, some people might say, yeah, but they're not going to move on it. No, they can. They definitely, not can, they
will.
have to.
They will.
Because it's a German national, a bank that is being accused of a very serious crime by, submitted to the federal prosecutor of the German government. Now, let's step back, because not too long ago, the Center for Constitutional Rights in America filed a war crime complaint based upon the same provisions that Dexter filed it, yeah, under certain sections of the Criminal Code and the Crimes Against International Law against Donald Rumsfeld and all high-ranking military officials, accusing them of torture, which is a war crime under the Geneva Convention. Okay. So the federal government of Germany received it, and they looked into it. And what they came out 1 year later, they made the determination that they're not going to prosecute. But they also made the comment, they have to prosecute if there's a German connection. They have to prosecute. Their reason why they could not prosecute was because neither the alleged perpetrators or the victims were German. So
nor could they find any discernible connection to Germany.
exactly, some German linkage.
Right.
Yeah, that maybe the torture took place in Germany.
Right.
Yeah, there was nothing. So the prosecutor said that they can't proceed to investigate and prosecute despite the evidence. But what this does is when they came up with the law, similar to America's law, the War Crimes Act, it says that because their law is more in line with international law, it tends to attract what is called forum shopping, where you have people around the world trying to find some forum that can fit within their framework of their argument, that we can probably get the German government to prosecute. This German government says, no, we will prosecute, but there has to be a German link, either by something happening within German territorial sovereignty or jurisdiction, or a German national abroad as a victim, or a German national abroad as a perpetrator. Basically, what Dexter provided to the German government is everything that the Center for Constitutional Rights should have provided regarding Rumsfeld, some German connection.
Well, actually, in that complaint to the German government, we used the example of the complaint against Rumsfeld and the denial from the German government and the reasons why that complaint was denied as our prerequisites for saying why we met those prerequisites. And I addressed it in the letter, and what I did was anticipated perhaps what might be positions taken by the German Republic why we won't meet certain requirements, and I addressed it up front in the letter saying, here's a requirement, we've met it. Here's another requirement, like it says, the fact that it was a German national committing crimes abroad. The fact that they will be present within the territory of Germany so that they can be investigated, they can be prosecuted. So there were a list of prerequisites. I provided that in the letter saying we've met each and every one of them. Now, Dr. Sai also spoke about the International Criminal Court complaint, and I know you alluded to that in your video with Lieutenant Kawai. What's important about that for those who may not know, I believe in the early part of 2013, January, February, I actually, on your behalf, filed a complaint with the International Criminal Court against these very same judges and against Deutsche Bank for the deprivation of a fair and regular trial, and as well as the pillaging aspect of it. So we reported it to the International Criminal Court. Now, as Dr. Sai was talking about complementary, the reason we filed with the German Republic was, of course, to show that we are making efforts to have the proper government, in this case the German government, prosecute. Now, the reason we do that is that first off, we believe it is the obligation of the German Republic to prosecute, to investigate and prosecute Deutsche Bank. But in the event, for whatever reason, they fail to prosecute, we can then invoke the jurisdiction of the ICC. Because what we've done is we can show ICC we've taken every step available to have other people look into it, the proper authorities look into it and investigate and prosecute. But since they're either failing or refusing to do so, such as the United States, when we reported your case to the United States Pacific Command, we can then say we've done everything we can to have other proper authorities investigate and prosecute. They failed or refused to. Now we're invoking the jurisdiction of the ICC.
Now, when the federal government of Germany prosecutes, again, they're limited to their territory, just as any other country. They're limited to their territory. Now, what has taken place here falls under what is called universal jurisdiction. Jurisdiction asserted by the federal government abroad. Yeah? And that's what that Criminal Act does. But it only ties into a German national as a victim or perpetrator. Yeah? That's the key. Or some other German linkage abroad. Okay. Now, the main culprits here, the alleged perpetrators, Deutsche Bank, their management board of directors are in Frankfurt, Germany. Okay? And they're named in the complaint, which means they can be approached by the federal prosecutor to answer to these allegations. But Lieutenant Kawai, Judge Nakamura, and whoever else was incidental in this pillaging process, they're outside of Hawaii. I mean, sorry, outside of Germany. Okay. What Germany has is an extradition treaty. An extradition treaty is where if one country issues an arrest warrant for an individual abroad, and it's under the authority of another sovereign. So even though this is not the United States of America, but the United States is here as an occupier, that international treaty would also apply to Germany. So what the German government can do is, after they investigate and they find that there is evidence, clear evidence of a crime, they can issue an order for an arrest, approach the United States to have the perpetrators, alleged perpetrators here in Hawaii, extradited to Germany for prosecution. That's very serious. And if the United States refuses to extradite, in order for them not to be in violation of that treaty, then what they have to do is to prosecute them themselves. So can you see what's happening when you get into the rules of law? And what's happening here is from district court to circuit court to federal court in California to the International Criminal Court to the German government. It's not forum shopping. What you're doing is you're exhausting the remedies. Yeah? You're showing that every step, every procedure is being adhered to. You're not trying different things because if anything, it is all consistent and they're all strung on the line of accountability. Yeah? So one action leads to the reaction of something else. So when Dexter brought up that point about the International Criminal Court and complementarity, they have to watch and be sure that they don't override other governments' responsibility. So the United States as an occupier, which Dexter did file the initial complaint with regarding your case, should have stepped up, but they didn't. Okay? That's why this is taking place. Then when the complaint was filed with the International Criminal Court, basically it's stating, well, the Pacific Command didn't step up. But an ultimate question could be, well, if it's Deutsche Bank, which is a German bank, well, complementarity might be violated if the ICC steps in when Germany may say that's their responsibility. So I think when the complaint was filed with Germany, as Dexter provided, it adds additional evidence and leverage on whether or not the ICC will step in or the German government is going to do it. So what you're seeing here is it's a legal procedure. Yeah? It's a legal procedure that is very sound. It's methodical. Yeah? It's procedural. So when you were explaining this to Lieutenant Kawai on the video, when you said you're following the rules, that is an understatement. At every level, the rules are being followed. And where they're not being followed, that now becomes evidence for an additional rule to be invoked. So each is a part of a process. Yeah? And that process is what you may call the rule of law, at many levels.
You know what's really interesting in the at Sheriff Kawai's level, it's a domino effect because you have the judges who know all of the laws and they're sitting in judgment over these cases that we've provided them with all of the information and so forth. So the judges have signed off unlawfully on all these orders and now they pass it down to the sheriffs. And the sheriffs now are having to literally do the dirty work of the judges. And so, they're trying to do their job and they're looking for direction from, whoever else, whether it's the Attorney General's office or, guys from Honolulu to the neighbor islands, and they're getting orders from, the higher-ups, go take out Kale Gumopak, So if you're Sheriff Patrick Kawai, what would be a way for him to prevent himself from getting himself into hot water? Because, because it's a domino effect. And if he carries out the eviction, you know, and he's going to be complicit in a war crime.
Well, I think what it boils down to is the order. Because he is in a position of enforcement. He's part of an executive branch. An executive branch is a branch that executes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. military is part of an executive branch. They execute the orders carried out by the president, you know, when you're going into harm's way. Now, when you execute orders and you have a sidearm, okay, there are certain rules that have been developed called rules of conduct. Okay. Now, in the military, the Geneva Convention is a rule, it's a law, that says you will not shoot civilians, okay, if they're not a perpetrator. Okay. Well, in the case of Vietnam, Lieutenant Calley was given orders to shoot villagers. So his platoon shot up villagers, the My Lai incident. Okay. Now, Lieutenant Calley committed a crime. That's a crime. His job was not to carry out the order solely, but rather his added responsibility, especially as an officer, a lieutenant, is to determine the validity of the order. And that's when you get into what is called an unlawful order or a lawful order. Now, what is an unlawful order versus a lawful order? An unlawful order is an order to commit a crime. That's an unlawful order. A lawful order is to carry out a judgment that does not constitute a crime. That's basically the definitions. Lieutenant Calley knew, as an officer, killing civilians is a violation of the laws of war. His order that he said he relied on was to basically commit a crime. That's an unlawful order. Mm. His job was not to carry out that unlawful order. It is his duty to not carry out an unlawful order. And that the excuse, I was just following an order, is not an excuse. It does not remove your liability. In fact, the Nazis, high officials, attempted to make that argument in the Nuremberg trials. We're just following orders. You were following orders knowing you're going to commit a crime. That did not hold any weight. So when we look at law enforcement now, not just military, but law enforcement, which also derives out of the executive branch, there are rules of conduct. Especially law enforcement carries sidearms. Okay? There is a higher standard for somebody who's carrying a sidearm in a civilian population. They're held to another standard. And they have to understand what is called the rules of conduct. In the Sheriff's Department, the rules of conduct specifically says that individuals do not carry out unlawful orders. Okay? Now, to not carry out an unlawful order, it also says that you must provide a written report of the reasons why you will not carry out unlawful orders. That's how the process works. So what I find interesting in this video is Lieutenant Kavai. He says, well, I have my personal beliefs, but I got to follow my orders. Right there you see there's a discerning between what you know and what you are ordered to do. You obviously have a conflict here. Now, if what you know is that you know it's a crime, then the order that you are told to carry out is an unlawful order. You can't separate them. You know, you can't say, I'm just following my orders. No, the Nuremberg trials refuted that, and also Lieutenant Calley, that was not an excuse. So Lieutenant Kavai and anybody in law enforcement, just follow the procedures. That's all it's supposed to be, is follow procedures to address certain issues. So what I would hope would be that Lieutenant Kavai would, I hope, know that what he's doing is unlawful because he has the evidence, and clearly by watching the video, he is torn. He obviously knows there's something wrong with this. He needs to submit a written report to his higher-ups explicitly providing the evidence, in particular what Dexter provided, the added complaints filed with the German government, you know, the International Criminal Court, and get them to answer it, and not let the state government of Hawaii answer it. This is an international matter. Get the U.S. State Department at the federal level answer it after they contact the German government. after they contact the International Criminal Court. That's how it's supposed to work. So Lieutenant Cali, let's say before he committed that crime of killing the villagers, he submits his question up to his chain of command, and it only stops at the company level. And his captain says, no, it's okay, it's lawful, shoot the women and children. He is even more liable for carrying out that order, because it should have come from the chain of command at the very top. And what I find very interesting too about Lieutenant Cali, in his prosecution, what he did was he committed a war crime under the Geneva Convention, okay, by killing the villagers. But did you know that he did not get prosecuted as a war crime? He actually was prosecuted under the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know what the charge, unbecoming of an officer or murder, maybe murder, yeah. See, by going after Lieutenant Cali in that way, you don't go up the chain of command for the war crime. No, that's how they, no, I'm serious.
They protected the guys at the top.
This is actually what happened with the Cali incident, the My Lai incident. He was prosecuted under the UCMJ as a soldier. He should have been prosecuted by military commission for committing a war crime under the Geneva Convention. He wasn't. Because to do that, it would hit his whole chain of command.
Yeah.
All the way to the very top. Even Westmoreland, who was the commander in general of Vietnam. So that's how important war crimes need to be understood, especially in light of Lieutenant Cavai, because it also includes the entire chain of command. It doesn't stop at the Attorney General level. It includes everybody. So I think what is important here is to continue to be on the track of disclosure, yeah, procedures. And I appreciate what you told Lieutenant Cavai in the video, Kali, that you're following the rules. There's no violence here. We're following the rules. And if anybody can say they are following the rules, it would be you. And you have good counsel here that's actually advising on certain things, and I'm advising as a consultant. And the key here is to follow the rules, because everything is in our favor. What's happening is people are just making decisions that, one, are wrong, but more importantly, are criminal.
Well, and like I said, and that's why I've been providing Lieutenant Kawai with copies of all the complaints I filed on your behalf to the International Criminal Courts, the Pacific Command, as well as this recent complaint to the German Republic. I provided him a copy. Now, also, and you might see from reviewing the complaint to the German Republic, it also did CC a copy of that complaint to the Pacific Command, as well as the International Criminal Court, so that everyone is apprised of the charges that are being brought. It is hoped that this information provides sufficient impetus, so to speak, for Lieutenant Kawai to follow his code of conduct, to send his report or to prepare a report, send it up the chain of command, and not to take any action until such time as they can actually address all of the charges that are made. Of course, my position is that they won't be able to address it because the evidence really is indisputable.
Yeah, and you take a look at this situation. You know, Cully, you haven't taken hostages where it is an issue of necessity to protect the public from some guy who's crazy. Yeah, this is an issue of a home who you provided evidence of a defect for insurance to pay off the loan, which was required by the bank themselves.
It was a contract.
It's just following the procedure.
Following procedures, contractual law.
Why is it that there is so much pressure to move on this so quickly? Yeah, to try to get everyone who are Laulima clients per se to intimidate them. Now, that process of intimidation definitely leads to actions that constitute crimes, which are now being reported. But this issue of Cully's home, it's not like a pressing issue where the public is threatened by some danger to life and property. You know, it isn't. I find that very interesting in that they keep pushing and pushing as if this is going to undermine the entire system. You know, it's just a matter of contracts. It's a matter of obligations. It's a matter of who's paying who, who's responsible for paying who. Let the insurance company refute the evidence. If the insurance company can prove, the title insurance company can show clear evidence that Hawaii is a part of the United States, then proceed with the ejectment. That's how it's supposed to be. You know, so I just find that quite interesting. And it looks like these are enemies of the state or something. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, what was it really interesting was, you know, soon after the writ of possession was served on me, the two of you was able to come together, and another client of Launima, you guys were able to do something that I thought was really brilliant. And this was with Alma, of which you guys were able to file with the Filipino consulate. And I think maybe you guys should be able to address that.
Okay, I'll start real quickly, but it actually occurred, that filing with the Philippine General Consulate actually happened before our filing of a complaint with the German Republic in your case.
Right. Because I think this is very interesting that people who are listening to this show should really pay close attention to this, because this is going to affect a lot of people here in Hawaii.
Well, on August 15th of this year, on behalf of my client, Alma Schwartz, she is a Philippine national, and under the Philippine national, her identity is Alma Pilapil, P-I-L-A-P-I-L. So she is still a Philippine national citizen. The Philippine government also has a statute similar to the statute that both the United States and the German Republic has, that makes the deprivation of a fair and regular trial and pillaging war crimes. So on her behalf, we filed a complaint. I filed a complaint on her behalf with the General Consulate of the Philippines, or the Republic of the Philippines, asking them to do what we did in your case for Germany, asking the Philippine Republic to investigate and prosecute the criminals in her case. That would include the judges in her case, the bank that attempted, well, that in fact did carry out enforcement orders and in fact did deprive her and evict her from her property.
And Lieutenant Kawai.
And that it did include Lieutenant Kawai. So in that case, not only the deprivation of fair and regular trial, but the pillaging actually did occur. She was deprived of her property. So we did report that to the Philippine government. Again, and I'll have Dr. Sai talk about it some as well. The Philippine government, by its own law, is obligated to do investigation when it happens to involve their own Philippine citizens. So when war crimes are committed their own Philippine citizens, they have a standing obligation to investigate and prosecute. That was the reason for filing the complaint on her behalf. It was acknowledged and received on the 15th, and I believe it is being sent up their chain of command at this time.
And also the Philippine government, like Germany, has an extradition treaty with the United States. So although the crime committed abroad, they can investigate with evidence, and if they charge, they can call for the extradition of these alleged perpetrators, which includes Bank of Hawaii, the directors for Bank of Hawaii, the CEO, whoever was involved, depending on the investigation where it goes.
Yeah, and on your blog, you posted on your blog and listed the people that were charged.
Yeah, so we got also Judge Ibarra from Kona. We got the attorney, Mitzi Lee, okay? And they're all tied. They're all part of the complaint. Yeah? Just like in the case of you, it would be Deutsche Bank, be Judge Nakamura, and it would be Charles Prather.
Charles Prather.
Right. Michael Wong.
Michael Wong
and Sophia Hirosani, something, yeah. So these are the alleged perpetrators. Now those that are here in Hawaii, that was part of the Filipino complaint, they could be finding themselves subject to extradition.
Right. And as Dr. Sai said, and as you know, Lieutenant Kawai was the officer that executed the unlawful order for writ of possession and evicted Ms. Schwartz, Ms. Pilapil, from her property. So when that complaint with with the Filipino government was filed, a copy of that complaint was also sent to Lieutenant Kawai, apprising him of the situation. Again, my whole job in representing my clients is to seek compliance by law enforcement. We haven't been able to seek compliance by the courts yet, so my job, my duty is to seek compliance by Lieutenant Kawai. And the hope is that by receiving these complaints and receiving the information, he again, at some point, stands down and doesn't enforce these unlawful orders. It is hope that it prevents other clients of mine from being unlawfully evicted.
And Alma's complaint was also carbon copied to the International Criminal Court and the Pacific Command and the Human Rights Commission in Geneva, because Alma, just as yourself and Kona Bright, had complaints filed with the International Criminal Court, that issue of complementarity also comes into play. So now, but the Filipino government stepping in, because this was a Filipino citizen whose rights have been violated. So again, you're starting to see these components being played out where they're all really all interconnected. And one move will affect another. They're all connected. And that's as I stated earlier, the rule of law, the process, the procedures. So at every step, it is full disclosure. It is education, but it is at a point where there is liability.
And I think the reason why you were thinking it's interesting, and I'll let Dr. Sai comment on it, is because of the fact that we have a large population of Filipinos here, and the implication that it could have a huge impact on all that reside here in Hawaii. And I'll let Dr. Sai talk about that.
Absolutely. That's right. The Filipino community here, Filipino citizens, that are in Hawaii, are protected under treaties in an occupied country. They are protected. Now, war crimes that have been committed, let's say a Filipino citizen was incarcerated, okay? A Filipino national, incarcerated for whatever the case was, whether at the federal or state level here in Honolulu. Right off the bat, these courts are all illegal. You don't have to raise the argument. They are illegal. And these Filipino citizens would have certain rights under what is called the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, meaning they should have been apprised of the right to contact their consulate of their rights during the trial. Now, whether they were guilty or innocent is not the issue here. The issue here is whether or not a fair trial took place. That's the key. It's all procedural, okay? And if a fair trial did not take place, then a fair trial needs to take place. Now, there's an important case here that resonates in the case of Germany. There was an individual, a German citizen, last name Legrand, okay, who was convicted in Texas for murder and put on death row. The German government filed a complaint with the International Court of Justice to put a hold on the on the execution, because this German citizen was not given the opportunity in the beginning to exercise his right to contact the consulate for advice. The United States disregarded the decision by the International Court of Justice to stay the execution because they said they couldn't get the information from the federal down to the state level in time. What you have there is a problem where Germany stepped in to protect their German national before execution. Now, Germany moved now for compensation and everything to the families. That's a matter for diplomacy. But clearly, you see the German government even protecting one of its citizens who was already incarcerated. In this particular case, Filipino citizens under the same protection, the Geneva Convention on Consular Relations, the protection of Filipino citizens under the Geneva Convention for the protection of civilians, Geneva Convention number 4. All of that has not taken place in, let's say, a prosecution. So a Filipino citizen could make a complaint with the Filipino government for war crimes, okay, while in prison, or not in prison anymore, but have the evidence of incarceration. Another very big issue here is the immigration law, the Immigration Act that naturalized. Okay, so naturalization, according to the U.S. federal law, stems from the authority of the Attorney General. Okay, Attorney General in Washington, D.C. And naturalizations can only take place within states of the Union. It's specific. It says states of the Union, which they also include Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands. They include all of them except Samoa. So you cannot get naturalized in Samoa. But you can be naturalized in all the other places of the United States. Because Hawaii is occupied, it's not part of the United States. That immigration law doesn't apply here. So all the Filipino citizens who have been granted naturalization have not really been granted naturalization.
In
Well,
Hawaii.
it's
Hawaii.
not just Filipinos, it's everyone.
Anybody.
Everyone who is naturalized
Right.
in Hawaii.
But in this particular case, because there is a U.S. Filipino law, what they can say is there are certain laws in the in the war crimes called appropriation of property, payment for naturalization. Yeah. Somehow somebody can look at that and determine whether or not that would constitute a crime abroad. Fraud. I don't know if fraud is under the criminal code. I don't know. But a Filipino could actually file a complaint, you know, and they could retain Dexter to do this, to file a complaint with the Filipino government for against the United States for fraud. Meaning, I need to be naturalized. Because right now, she's not, or he's not. And if they're not, then that means they're still Filipino. If they're still Filipino, then that means the Filipino government got to step in. But you're right, naturalization here in Hawaii never happened for anybody, whatever their nationality or their citizenship was. So Germans, who may have been naturalized here in Honolulu, were not naturalized because of the limitation of the immigration law. You know, so again, you can see the ramifications.
Yeah.
It's profound.
And more importantly, if, you know, especially for those that have had their homes foreclosed on or in the process of getting their homes foreclosed on, more reason for them to, you know, make contact with, you know, Laulima and
So if you're a Philippine national or you've been naturalized here in Hawaii, then again, the deprivation of a fair and regular trial or the pillaging of your home may be a war crime that's protected by the German, excuse me, by the Philippine government.
Philippine
Right.
Their
government.
obligation to protect the Philippine national citizen.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Exactly, because all mortgages in Hawaii are invalid. All of them, since 1893. And if they're invalid, then all foreclosures have been invalid. Then every ejectment is invalid. So then what you have is unfair trial and pillaging. And those come under the Filipino law of war crimes.
And I would also say if you're nationality of another country, you know, just contact us and let us, you know, let us go check and see where you're at, you know, because it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You know, for us to see what treaties, extradition treaties there are and what kind of protection that you may fall under.
Mm-hmm.
I can only deal with the complaint that's before me. So
I mean, I've got the two best experts here in Hawaii ever, you know, so I'm looking at the best, you know, and I'm working with the best.
You know, but the key here, though, is it's compliance.
Right.
Yeah. Compliance and no more defiance. Yeah. So the key here is to comply. And it might be, to some people, very far-fetched. They're going, you mean everything. Yeah, but just start off with you and look at what happened to yourself. And have I become a victim of something that I didn't know that I was actually a victim? You may not even know you've been a victim, you know. But evidence is there. Evidence is fixed in time. You can always pull it forward. But the key here is procedural. It's the rule of law. It's compliance. Because compliance, okay, is how you deal with non-compliance. That's the key.
And I can tell you there is one judge on Maui and who has actually postponed some of my motions to dismiss because he actually had questions. I've actually made arguments before him before, and he's reviewed the pleadings and the evidence, and it just raises more questions for him. So what he's done is he's taken a temporary how can I say that, stay of his motions and asked for more information. So of course I look
He's,
at
you know,
that as,
he's actually doing what you're trying to get Lieutenant Kavai to do.
right.
Stand down until you get more information. That's what this judge is doing.
Right, so he's provided me a series of questions and asked me to provide a supplemental memorandum. And of course, I look at that and I took that as an opportunity to do so. Because again, it is my hopes in providing him all the information and then asking him to comply.
You know what I find interesting though is the motivating factor, or one of the motivating factors. I want to say the motivating factor is the law. But a motivating additional factor that was involved in this individual's decision was that he will be traveling to Europe for the holidays. And there is a question of being detained. And that's good to know. But again, it still gets back to, but as a judge, look at the law. Now, there may be some motivating factors or extra motivating factors to get you to look at the law. But everyone is affected by this. And I think by that individual making that point where I need more information, I think that's a window of opportunity here, because it's a move toward compliance and learning and and you know what normally happens, because this is what we do at the university. Once you answer one question, you're going to have 5 more questions to answer. Then you answer those 5 questions, you got 10 more questions to answer. It's a process. But that question that you're going to get answered will alleviate this particular issue, but it'll open up additional issues. And I think at this stage, we're looking at whether or not this court can claim to have jurisdiction. And if it cannot, and it moves on, it would have constituted a war crime, which can be reported and prosecuted.
Oh, maybe we should get some nonprofit groups or something to send all judges on a free trip to Europe, you know. Maybe that might be a great motivational factor to help to get the judges to really do a 180-degree turnaround if that's what it takes. But you know, the interesting thing, you know, about what has taken place is that when we first started all of this, you know, people were excited about it, but clearly didn't understand it when we first started this several years ago. And it took a lot of education and, you know, the work that you've done, Keanu, and all of the legal work that you've done, you know, in the courts, you know, to finally, I mean, sink in both in the community as well as, you know, in the courtrooms and outside, for people to see this thing really start to grow. And we're starting to see it, I mean, just mushroom, literally mushroom. And the effects now, not only in the schools and elsewhere, but we're starting to see it grow, you know, just multiplying, you know, in a huge way. And the effects is just enormous. And I hope that, you know, the people that are listening to the show will continue to tune into our shows and continue to keep track, especially on your blog, HawaiianKingdom.org/blog. That's Dr. Keanu Sai's blog. And at every step of the way, try to keep track of Attorney Dexter Kayama, because I really appreciate working with these two gentlemen, because to me, these are the trailblazers, and they're just tremendous at what they do. And I appreciate all of you for continuing to watch the Kanaka Express and all of the comments, the good comments that you've been able to make. Continue to watch it. Let Dane and the staff here at Olelo know about how good the show is, and continue to watch it. And again, I'd like to thank my two guests, Dr. Ken Osai and Dexter Kayama. Dane, again, mahalo. Great job. Oh, and mahalo, Doreen, for all of your work. Ahui ho, everybody.
Aloha.